Hello again, book lovers. In Russian and French Prisons was written by Peter Kropotkin from personal knowledge and also from an official point of view, as we'll see. Now, I like to read books in parallel, and I happen to be reading 3 quite chunky volumes at the moment, but when I got my hands on this, I whisked through it. I've been wanting to read this for a while. You can, if you like, download it for free. It's in the public domain, but I don't know. To me, it's not the same having 70 sheets of paper as having an actual book. In any case, here it is in the edition with new introduction by Paul Avrich, who I can only assume is the translator. And the first point is to say this is one of the worst translations I've ever read of anything. Clunky sentences that sound like they're from 300 years ago. Vocabulary which isn't in use. One glaring omission of a negative in one of the sentences. The transcription of the Russian word pud is done differently in different places, etc, etc. But all power to Mr. Kropotkin, because despite that utter clunkiness, it's a good rattling read because of the subject matter and also because of the no-nonsense style. Kropotkin was in fact commissioned to have a look at the prisons in Siberia, and some of the chapters in this book are the results of those reports. Another is an answer to a magazine article that attacked his reports, and a couple more are moral reflections. So what do we find in the book? Well, we find inhuman cruelty, we find Kafkaesque judicial systems that leave people effectively in oubliettes for 10, 20 years, and these could just be dark rooms with absolutely nothing in, where you are kept in solitary, which is a form of torture. Or you could be marched for thousands of miles, sleeping at these sort of stations that were erected for the use of, although they were all dirty, lice infested, falling to pieces. The Peter Paul fortress gets a special mention, as Mr. Kropotkin himself was in that place, although not in one of the worst parts of it by the looks of things. A certain Mr. Landell came to do a prison inspection and was only shown the best bits, so Kropotkin is at pains to put him right. But what he tells us in doing that is the kind of expected tales of cruelty that you get from Russia, but they never fail to produce a jaw-dropping effect in me as a reader. And I think this kind of book should be well known, should be propagated, so that we can see at least how harsh times were back in the past, how much we've progressed, although we often think we haven't, and hopefully heed some warnings of a completely autocratic government, of a spying network that would haul you in on the slightest suspicion of a revolutionary poem, for example. And there you see, that's where I caught myself thinking, just a minute, yes, we've seen all this before, but we're talking pre-revolution. These are the Tsar's prisons that Stalin seemed to think were a little bit too light touch, as he was exiled to a village where he seemed, by his own accounts, to have actually had quite a good time. I can only assume he didn't get the short end of the stick, because what the people that suffered the sharp end of the stick suffered is, to my mind, as bad as anything that Stalin concocted. Anyway, there weren't many words to the page, quite large print, flew by, more so at the beginning than at the end. There's a stack of real-life examples and statistics which show exactly how appalling the treatment of prisoners was, and then it gets towards the end more of a theoretical sort of arguments appearing. An interesting slab of history for anyone that wants to know about the Russian penal system, or just Russian society in general back in Tsarist times. It's unfortunate, but we read tragic tales from everywhere. But Russia really does seem to be a kind of top of the tree example for getting to the limits of human endurance and human misery. So if that's your bag, you can gobble this up in a couple of evenings, and you'll be all the wiser for it.